A new car in America now costs about $50,000. Read that number again, because it should not be possible. $50,000 for the average car. Not a luxury car, not a truck, the normal one, the one a teacher drives to work. The typical loan now stretches 7 years. 1 in 4 people who trade in a car still owe more than the car is worth. An entire country has been quietly priced out of the thing it cannot live without and told to just sign a longer loan. Now hold that number in your head, because on the other side of the world, something is happening that makes $50,000 look insane. A company was selling a brand new electric car for $4,200. Not used, not a kit, brand new, with a warranty, a heater, a screen on the dash. And here's the part that should stop you cold. It was not losing money on that car. It was making a profit on every single one. For a while, almost nobody in the West took it seriously. They laughed at it. They called it a toy, a golf cart, a joke. And then that joke quietly became the best-selling electric vehicle on the entire planet and started outselling Tesla in the world's largest car market. The people who laughed are not laughing anymore. Some of them are terrified. This is the story of how the cheapest car in the world humiliated the most powerful car industry on Earth. How a vehicle everyone mocked exposed a trap that the biggest names in cars had spent 25 years building around themselves. And by the end, one of the most famous CEOs in America is going to say something out loud that his entire industry did not want said. If you like stories about the technology quietly rewriting the rules of the world, subscribe and stay to the end, because the ending is the part nobody sees coming. Let us start with how America got here. To understand the shock, you have to understand the slow part first, because the $50,000 car did not happen overnight. It was built, one reasonable decision at a time, over a quarter of a century. For most of the last century, American car makers built for everyone. Students, young families, first-time buyers. The whole idea was volume. Sell to as many people as you can. Then, sometime in the late 1990s, someone ran the margins and noticed a quiet fact that would reshape the entire country. A big SUV earns 3 to 4 times the profit of a small sedan, built on the very same factory line. Not a little more, several times more. So slowly, the cheap car started to disappear. Not in a dramatic way, just a model quietly dropped here, a factory line switched over there. Ford eventually walked away from almost all of its passenger sedans. General Motors leaned hard into trucks and SUVs. One by one, everyone followed the money, because on a spreadsheet, it was the obvious thing to do. And here's the part that is easy to miss, because it happened so gradually. Once the cheap cars were gone, the dealerships changed the conversation. They stopped talking about what a car costs. They started talking about the monthly payment. Can you do $600 a month? $700? Then just stretch the loan out longer and longer until the payment feels small enough to sign. Nobody in a suit sat in a room and decided to price working families out of new cars. It was just the spreadsheet, followed faithfully by every company at once for 25 years. Each step made sense on its own. Add them all together, and you get a country where the average car costs as much as a year of many people's income, and where owning one increasingly means owing more than it is worth. And the strangest part is that everyone inside the industry considered this a success. Profits per vehicle were up. The trucks and SUVs were enormous moneymakers. By every number on the quarterly report, Detroit was winning. That is what makes a trap like this so dangerous. It does not feel like a mistake while you are building it. It feels like the smartest thing you have ever done. Right up until the moment someone proves there was another way the whole time. That was the trap. Quiet, logical, profitable, and almost invisible from the inside. And while Detroit was congratulating itself on those fat margins, 6,000 miles away, someone was about to ask a completely different question. A question so simple it sounds almost childish. And it was going to take the entire American playbook apart. Here is the question that started everything. Not, how do we build a more impressive car, but what if most people do not need one at all? Look at how people actually drive. In a Chinese city, the average trip is around 6 miles. A grocery run, a school pickup, a short hop to work. So Chinese engineers asked something Detroit had stopped asking. Why build a 400-mile car for a 6-mile life? Strapping a giant battery onto a short trip is like buying a semi-truck to carry 1 bag of groceries. And that battery is not a small detail. In a cheap electric car, it can be 1/3 of the entire cost. Shrink it to fit the real trip, and you do not save a little. You knock out one of the single most expensive parts of the whole car. That is how you get the Wuling Hongguang Mini EV. A car the size of a golf cart, $4,200, brand new. 2 doors, 4 seats if 2 of them are children, a top speed too gentle to earn a highway ticket. On paper, it sounds like nothing. In practice, more than 1 million of them ended up on the road, and it climbed all the way to the best-selling electric car on the planet. And it was not alone. Walk a Chinese auto show today and you see rows of them. Tiny cargo trucks, solar-topped scooters, little farm haulers under $1,500. Each one built by a company you have never heard of. Each aimed at one real job. A van for the delivery driver, a runabout for the grandparent, a hauler for the farmer taking crates to market. Not the fastest vehicle, not the flashiest, the cheapest one that still solves the problem. A whole industry pointed at the exact customers Detroit had decided were not worth building for anymore. But now, the real conflict begins. Because a cheap design does not explain a cheap price. Simplifying a car saves you some money. It does not get you to $4,000 with a profit on top. Something much bigger is going on underneath. And this is the part that turns a cute little car into a genuine threat. There is a rule in manufacturing so reliable that engineers plan their futures around it. Every time the total number of a thing ever built doubles, the cost of the next one falls by a fixed percentage. It is called the learning curve. And for batteries, the most expensive part of any electric car, that curve is savage. Battery prices have dropped about 90% since 2010. Not for a fancier battery, 90% cheaper for the exact same energy. Now here is why that detail is a weapon. Whoever builds the most batteries rides that curve down the fastest. And China did not just join the battery race, it took over the track. One company, CATL, now builds more than 1/3 of every EV battery on Earth. At that scale, you reach each price drop years ahead of everyone else. And every doubling makes the lead bigger, not smaller. And people still say the secret is cheap labor. Watch this. Wages in China have roughly tripled in the last 15 years. If cheap workers were the trick, these cars should be getting more expensive. Instead, they keep getting cheaper. because the curve is pulling down harder than wages can push up. This was never about cheap hands. It is about a machine the rest of the world did not build. The tiny car everyone laughed at is sitting on top of the most powerful cost engine in modern manufacturing. And it is still accelerating. So step back for a second, because this is the moment the people in charge had to make a choice. By now, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The cars were real. The profits were real. The prices were still falling. And every automaker outside China had to quietly ask themselves the same uncomfortable question. What do we do about a competitor whose costs drop every single year, on their own, no matter how hard we run? There was an easy answer, and for a while, everyone reached for it. Maybe it is fake. Maybe the whole thing is propped up by government money, and the real cost is just hidden behind a subsidy. It is a comforting thought if you are losing. It lets you believe the game is rigged, not lost. If they are only cheating, then you are not actually behind. You just need someone to make them stop. And to be fair, there was something to hold on to there. China did pour enormous amounts of state money into this industry for 2 decades. That part is true, and nobody serious pretends otherwise. For a while, you could look at those cheap cars and tell yourself the number on the sticker was not the real number, that somewhere a government was quietly covering the gap. It was a reasonable thing to believe. It was also about to be tested in the most direct way possible. But then, the money actually stopped. At the end of 2022, China wound down its main national subsidy for buying these cars. If the low prices were only a trick, this was the exact moment they should have snapped back up. Everyone was watching. And the prices did not rise. They kept falling. That is the moment the comforting story died. Because a subsidy is a one-time push. It can shove an industry down the hill, but it runs out, and it cannot keep making the next car cheaper forever. The cost curve is different. It compounds. It keeps falling on its own, as long as the volume keeps growing. The subsidies were the push at the top of the hill. The curve is gravity. And nobody has ever figured out how to tax gravity. So here is where the decision landed. The executives running the biggest car companies in the world now had a choice to make. They could keep pretending the little cars were a joke, or they could admit, out loud, that they had been beaten at the one thing they used to own: building affordable cars. One of them was about to say it out loud. And once he did, there was no taking it back. His name is Jim Farley. He runs Ford. And he did not hedge. Farley got behind the wheel of a Chinese electric car and drove it, not for an afternoon, but for months, as his personal daily ride. Then he told reporters, flatly, that he did not want to give it back. Sit with how big that is. The chief executive of Ford, the company Henry Ford built, the company that put America on wheels, publicly admitting that the best car he was driving came from the competitor his own industry had spent years mocking. He went further. He called the Chinese cost, supply chain, and manufacturing best in class. Not good, not catching up, best in class. Those are Ford's own words, from Ford's own CEO, on the record. Then he tore up the plan. For years, every carmaker measured itself against Tesla. Farley threw that out and rebuilt Ford's entire strategy around what he now calls the China cost curve. General Motors quietly slashed its own EV targets in the same stretch. The giants who laughed were now rearranging their whole future around the thing they laughed at. And this is the delicious part, the full inversion. Watch what the most powerful governments on Earth did next. Because their actions say what their press releases will not. They did not outbuild China. They could not. So they built walls. Europe slapped tariffs on Chinese electric cars to slow them down. The United States stacked tariffs so high they keep the cheapest models out of the country entirely. Think about what that actually means. You do not build a wall that tall around a competitor you believe is weak. You do not ban a joke. You wall out the thing you are afraid you cannot beat on a level field. The mockery flipped into fear right there in the tariff schedule for anyone willing to read it. And then comes the twist, even the walls cannot stop. Because a tariff only works on what crosses your border. It does nothing about a factory built inside it. So BYD, China's largest automaker, started building plants in Hungary, in Brazil, in Thailand. Once the factory is inside the wall is just decoration. You can tariff a car. You cannot tariff a cost curve that has already moved in next door and started hiring your neighbors. The little car that everyone called a toy did not just survive. It walked into the home markets of the giants who dismissed it and forced them to admit, in their own words and their own laws, that they were scared. That is the whole inversion, and every piece of it actually happened. So what does all of this finally add up to? Step back far enough, and this stops being a story about cars at all. For 100 years, industrial power meant controlling oil. Whoever held the wells and the refineries shaped how the whole world moved. That power came from scarcity and from a hard fact. You cannot pick up an oil field and move it somewhere friendlier. But batteries break that rule. A battery factory can be built almost anywhere with enough money, enough engineers, and enough time. So what China really built is not a resource it can be cut off from. It is a skill. The ability to ride that cost curve down faster than anyone else on Earth, and to point it at anything that runs on a battery. Not just cars, scooters, delivery robots, home power, small aircraft, all of it sits on the same falling curve. That is the real legacy of the $4,000 car. It was never really about one funny little vehicle. It was the first visible piece of a machine that can make almost anything that moves cheaper every single year. Built by asking the one question the rest of the industry had forgotten how to ask. Not how do we build the most impressive thing, how do we build the one that almost anyone can actually afford? And that is the quiet lesson underneath the whole story. The giants lost the future not because they were outspent or out-teched. They lost it because they walked away from ordinary people to chase a bigger margin. And someone else walked in and picked up everything they left on the table. It is the oldest pattern in business, and it catches the mightiest companies every time. Kodak invented the digital camera and buried it to protect film. Blockbuster laughed a tiny mail order company called Netflix out of the room. Nokia owned the phone and never saw the iPhone coming. Every one of them was winning, right up until the moment they were not. Detroit just walked into the same trap wearing a seatbelt. The car everyone laughed at is on the road right now. More than 1 million of them, in a country most people watching this have never visited. And the cost curve that built it has not stopped falling for a single day. Somewhere, in a factory the size of a small town, the next one is already coming off the line, a little cheaper than the last. If this story pulled you in, drop a like. It genuinely helps this kind of video reach more people. Subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the next one, because we chase exactly these stories. The quiet ones that turn out to be enormous. And now I want to hear from you. If a genuinely good electric car showed up tomorrow, safety approved, sitting in your driveway for $4,000, would you buy it without blinking? Or does a car that cheap make you trust it less? Tell me why below.